Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup 2020 Summer Showdown NA results. So we saw some crazy Overwatch in APAC and we went through that yesterday. If you didn't see it, go and check it out. But we're going to move on to North America today, where we saw obviously more fixtures because, well, there are more teams in NA. So this is ridiculous, this region. Actually, during this tournament has been bonkers. Because you had like the first half of it, which was really interesting, and then the second half was really interesting for a whole different reason. So let's take a look at the fixtures in order. And we started off on the Friday with Dallas Fuel taking on the Paris Eternal. So Paris Eternal, they're a very fortunate side right now because the meta has shifted towards more of a hit scan, so Widowmaker or Ashe or McCree sometimes, and a Genji instead of the Tracer, which is incredibly helpful for the Paris Eternal considering that Sparkle has just come of age, and Sparkle is one of the best Genji players in the world. So this was really handy for the Paris Eternal. Dallas Fuel, we saw Decay back, brilliant, nice to see, but the Paris Eternal have got a lot of quality, and they have too much quality for the Dallas Fuel. One thing I will say for this entire weekend though, is that no team was trash. Every team during this tournament gave a really good account of themselves, pretty much. Even some with some problems going on as well. So yeah, I've been really pleased to see that no team has been absolutely, completely crushed in every single game, or the only game they played, or whatever. So this has been really good, but this is a 3-1 for the Paris Eternal, and I think we should expect that sort of result. Paris Eternal have been up and down recently, but this team will settle with this sort of meta, which doesn't look like it's probably going to change much, I wouldn't have thought. I think this Paris Eternal team is really going to settle into it with Sparkle and a Genji. Anything's possible. Dallas Fuel, though, it's a rough one. It's a rough one, but this team has a lot of growing to do at the Dallas Fuel, and I hope they do continue to push on. But after that, we saw the Houston Outlaws taking on the Florida Mayhem. Now, this was a bit of a surprise. So, Houston Outlaws, they actually did beat the Mayhem 3-2 the other week, but they weren't the favourites going into this. Florida Mayhem obviously were the runners-up at the May Melee, but as I mentioned, the meta has shifted slightly, and I was a bit weirded out about how Florida Mayhem dealt with the Houston Outlaws. This ends as a 3-1 for the Outlaws, so Florida Mayhem do not even get anywhere near to trying to dethrone the San Francisco Shock, just like they tried to in the May Melee, and it's disappointing if you're a Florida Mayhem fan, I'm sure, but it's weird, because Houston Outlaws obviously playing Linksa and Dante. Dante was a nuisance, but nowhere near as impactful as Linksa was. But Linksa was being given free reign on the Widowmaker by Florida Mayhem. It was really weird, and you can't give a player like Linksa free reign, because he can just pick apart your team. And so Linksa, he picked apart the Florida Mayhem, that's without a doubt. We didn't really see BQB match him. BQB stuck on the Ashe a lot of the time, and we didn't see where was the Yaki Genji. Yaki stuck on the Tracer a lot, which was disappointing. I wanted to see the Yaki Genji. We'd seen it in the regular season fixtures, and for some reason it didn't come out, and I think this is where Florida Mayhem lacked. It really was, and yeah, Houston Outlaws are good for that 3-1 win, but things get a little bit weirder. Because next up we have the Toronto Defiant taking on the Los Angeles Valiant. And, well, this is not straightforward either. Because the Valiant, they'd had some roster issues. We saw Gig come in for Dreamer for some reason, but we also saw Apply come in on the Brigitte because Lastro wasn't playing. And there's been some issues with Lastro. We are not sure exactly how it's going to end, but he didn't play. And Lastro has been actually pretty good for the Valiant this year. So Valiant were very all over the place. Toronto Defiant took great delight in capitalizing on this with a 3-1 victory. And Toronto Defiant, I'm not going to take anything away from them. Logics stepped up. We also saw Agilities step up. Agilities and Logics, some of the best play I've seen from them in years. Literal years. It's really good to see those two stepping up. Numlocked was decent. Nevix did really well. Kariv is just Kariv. I mean, like, goodness me, he could get on a better team than a Toronto Defiant. Sorry, Toronto Defiant fans, but Kariv is just so darn good. Probably the best player on that roster. But it's nice to see Agilities and Logics doing well. Agility's really at home on the Genji. Logic's starting to pop off on the Widow, on the Ashe. So it's good to see those two doing well, and they deserved their 3-1 victory over the Valiant, despite the efforts of KSF, KSP, and Shaxx to try and stop them. But moving on, and the last quarterfinal, this was a knockout. Washington Justice taking on the Los Angeles Gladiators. Again, didn't go the way in which people would have thought it would have gone. This was a 3-1 for the Washington Justice. And I did think there was scope for the Washington Justice to knock the Gladiators out here. And this is a mighty disappointing one for the Gladiators once again. I don't think anyone can deny that. The Gladiators, they are not the team we thought they were at the start of this season. And if results continue like this, they're going to struggle to make play-ins. And that would be incredibly disappointing for a team that a lot of people had in their top 10, if not higher, at the start of this season. So, yeah, not good for the Gladiators. Washington Justice, however, improvements. Stitch is starting to settle in. So is Janu. Tuba on the Genji is magnifique, and everyone is starting to click. There are a few issues. Obviously, that's Raw, which is one of the issues. But they are starting to do better, and this is a pleasing sign if you're a Washington Justice fan. And Washington Justice, honestly, if they make the right moves in the off season, they could be one of the big hype trains that could be going into the 2021 season. So yeah, look out for the Washington Justice next year. I think this year is going to be building from now on, but it's going to be interesting. Moving on to the quarterfinals, though, this is where we saw the Vancouver Titans, Atlanta Reign, San Francisco Shock, and Philadelphia Fusion come in. So first of all, we started off with the Paris Eternal taking on the Vancouver Titans, and Vancouver, they're improving. Like, we know what happened with Vancouver. They brought in this new roster. It's got very interesting players in it, and they're starting to improve. They're starting to grind out some nice looking matches, even if they lose, and they're actually starting to grind out some wins as well. That's what got them in this position as number 4 or 3 seed. I can't remember which one it was, but they had to take on the Paris Eternal, and yeah, Paris Eternal are too good. I'm sorry, too good once again. 3-1 for the Paris Eternal. Vancouver gave a good account of themselves, but this Paris Eternal squad has really good quality, and you could see that in all of the areas of the Paris Eternal, when you look at the supports, when you look at the tanks, when you look at the DPS especially, they are better than the Vancouver Titans, and so this result reflects that. But you can also see the effects that adrenaline and the willingness to do well in a tournament situation has on certain teams. Houston is an example of this, getting a better result than they did in the regular season against Florida. Washington against the Gladiators, for example. One of the matches coming up next. And the Vancouver Titans giving the Paris Eternal a real good game. Because in the regular season, would it have been like this? I don't know. But the question is, would a Paris Eternal have been so good? There's a lot of questions around it. But moving on, we had the Toronto Defiant taking on the Atlanta Reign. And when I talk about doing well in knockout pressure situations, Toronto Defiant have really demonstrated that. They really impressed me during this tournament. And Atlanta Reign come into this as one of the top 4 seeds. In fact, they were seed number 2. So they got to pick the Toronto Defiant after Washington Justice were picked by the San Francisco Shock. And Toronto Defiant were like, yeah, you picked us, did you? Mistake. This goes to 5 maps, but it's a 3-2 win for the Toronto Defiant. Very interesting. Very impressive from the Toronto Defiant. This means that they seal a win on their record as well, which is incredibly useful for a team in the Toronto Defiant situation. Atlanta Reign, this is going to be mega disappointing for them. And with what's apparently going to happen with Baby Bay with a possible retirement, I'm sure that's going to be really disappointing. But Toronto Defiant were good for their win. It was extremely close. It was extremely close. Let's not take that away from anyone. But logics and agilities making the difference. And I don't think I certainly haven't said that this season, but I haven't said it in a very long time. Agilities, I always think he's a very inconsistent player. I don't think Logics has ever lived up to the Logics we saw before the Overwatch League, especially when he took the Florida Mayhem back those years ago now. But it's nice to see those two players finally stepping up. Numlocked was good enough to go toe-to-toe. And obviously we had Hawk and Nevix, and I think Nevix was better actually. And the Toronto Defiant, there's Kariv. And Kariv is just, oh my goodness, I said this just now, but he is so good. And sometimes this Toronto Defiant, honestly, I don't think would be in this position without Kariv. I mean, he's just so darn good. But Toronto steal? That's not fair. They seal a spot in the semi-finals, which is an incredible result. But the last quarterfinal was the Washington Justice taking on the San Francisco Shock, and this was much, much more like regular viewing, because the San Francisco Shock do get a 3-0 victory over the Washington Justice. That's not to say that the Washington Justice didn't turn up or got completely pasted by the San Francisco Shock, but you can see a clear quality difference and a clear teamwork difference between the San Francisco Shock and the Washington Justice, and it shows this in the scoreline. And the Shock marching on into that semi-final against Paris Eternal, and yeah, super interesting. But who would Toronto Defiant be taking on in the other semi-final? Would it be the Houston Outlaws or the Philadelphia Fusion? So, Houston Outlaws coming off the back of that really nice win over the Florida Mayhem. Florida Mayhem beat the Philadelphia Fusion in the May Melee. Philadelphia Fusion hadn't played yet because they got one of the top seeds. So, this was super interesting. But the Philadelphia Fusion have got EQO. And EQO is a darn good Genji. So, yeah. This is a 3-0 victory for the Philadelphia Fusion. I don't think anyone's too surprised about that, but it's still a great show from the Houston Outlaws to get to that position again. And I think the Houston Outlaws are improving, and that's, remember, with hydration on the main tank. Whether they stick next season with hydration on the main tank or trying to replace him with someone else, I still think it's a great look. It's good to see Linksa doing well again. It's good to see Dante doing well again. And I hope that the Houston Outlaws can improve further in the future. They can compete with the top teams right now, but taking wins off the likes of the Florida Mayhem shows improvement for this team, considering what it was earlier in the season when they couldn't get a win for love nor money. I think we are seeing a Houston Outlaws that is definitely much, much better than what we saw back when homestands were a thing. And when homestands come back, you have a crowd. And when you have a crowd, you have momentum, which is really, really, really cool. But we move on to our semi-finals, and this is where we saw, first of all, Toronto Defiant taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. I believe the San Francisco Shock were meant to take on the Paris Eternal first, but it didn't work out like that because I think the Shock had technical problems or something. But we saw the Toronto Defiant taking on the Philadelphia Fusion first. And this is where the Toronto Defiant are like way out of their depth. They're fighting fist to fist with the big boys here, and it doesn't go too well for them. This is a 3-0 victory for the Philadelphia Fusion. They tried their hearts out, bless the Toronto Defiant. But unfortunately, the Philadelphia Fusion have way too much quality for that Defiant roster right now. Even with agilities popping off and logics, it's still too much when you're going up against Carpe, Hisu, or EQO. And the tank line was obviously better with Fury and Sado. And then when you have people like Alarm and Funny Astro in the lineup, sometimes Boombox, Kariv doesn't stand out as much as he does against opponents like the Atlanta Reign and the Los Angeles Valiant. And so you can clearly see that the quality difference between the Fusion and the Defiant really stood out here with this 3-0 victory for the Fusion. But again, I still think Toronto Defiant should be really proud of what they've achieved during this Summer Showdown. I think they are a team that has really turned up. And if they can maintain this sort of form for the rest of the season, play-ins are certainly a possibility. I would like to see them maintain this sort of form, and the future's bright for Toronto Defiant fans if they can continue this sort of form. But the last two matches, obviously the semi-final and the final, are bonkers. So Philadelphia Fusion are now in the final, and we see in the second semi-final Paris Eternal taking on the San Francisco Shock. Now, we asked the question, can someone beat the San Francisco Shock? Because they came into this #1 seed, best team in NA. And the Paris Eternal are like, this is gonna be difficult, but we're gonna give it a darn good go. And that they do. It's a 3-2 for the Paris Eternal. This is one of the biggest and most interesting games I've seen of Overwatch in a long time. And I feel like I'm saying that a lot this season. I remember saying that with the Seoul Dynasty Shanghai match in the May Melee. But this was a crazy bonkers match. Two teams that have so much pop-off potential at this current time. You see Sparkle popping off. Then you see Rascal popping off. Then in comes XZ with his pop-off. Then in comes Ans with his pop-off. And then you've got the off-tanks. Hanbin was really good. He's going up against Choi Hyobin. who was really good as well. Then need we say about the support lines, and Fielder, we have to talk about Fielder at the end of the video, but Fielder was bonkers. Again, Violet had a really good time as well. Both teams, it was super close. It was super close. And Paris Eternal really stepped up to beat the San Francisco Shock. Really stepped up. And I've been waiting for this moment for a long time for the Paris Eternal. Ever since we saw the roster at the start of the season, when we saw the likes of XC and Sparkle coming in, and we were like, this team has so much potential. This is that potential being brought to bear. And it remains to be seen if they can maintain that going forward. But of course, now we've got a final to look at. Now, this final between the Paris Eternal and the Philadelphia Fusion will go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, matches of all time. It was bonkers. And we've said this before, actually. We said this with the Shanghai Dragon Soul match in the May Melee. We've seen incredible Overwatch in recent times, but this is an absolutely massive game. It swings both to the Fusion and the Eternal at times, and some of the plays from some of the players are just, it's just bonkers. And to think how much Overwatch, especially Paris, played in that amount of time is just crazy. So let's take a look at this then. And Paris started us off on Lijiang Tower. And this was a 2-0 for the Paris Eternal. Looking decent early on. It was fairly close though. So it was all to play for at that time. Philadelphia Fusion would bite back though on a very close King's Row, which ended 4-3 to them, with Paris Eternal unable to cap the first point on their second run. And a 3-2 on Volskaya would see Philadelphia Fusion take the lead 2-1. But this meant that the Paris Eternal had to bite back, obviously, otherwise Fusion were going to start running away with things, and Paris do exactly that, with a very good 3-1 victory on Watch Point Gibraltar. And then we go to Nepal, and they get a 2-0 there. This means that it swung back to the Paris Eternal, with them now up 3-2, and all of a sudden we're thinking, well, who's going to win this map? This match. We've got tons of players popping off. Fielder, we've got the entire backline of the Philadelphia Fusion. We've got Carpe, we've got EQO, we've got Sparkle, we've got Exy, we've got Benbest doing really well for the Paris Eternal. We've got Hambin, we've got Fury, we've got Sado. Crazy amounts of skill here. And we go to Blizzard World, and this is where Fusion would draw the match up. They win 4-3 on Blizzard World, drawing it to 3-3, which means that we would end this all on Rialto, and no one finishes this map. But Paris get 2 points on the board, don't manage to get to third, and it's all about the defense. And there was some extraordinary clutch moments on this defense. It's crazy. It really is. EQO clutches up a massive fight to get Philadelphia Fusion the first point, but Paris Eternal clutch up to stop Fusion getting to that second point, and Paris Eternal get the 2-1 victory on Rialto, meaning they would take the series 4-3. Paris Eternal would be crowned the champions of the Summer Showdown in North America. Oh my goodness me. This series was close. Really close. Massive props to the Philadelphia Fusion. Massive props to the Paris Eternal. We're going to talk more about this. I mean, it's kind of heartbreaking to see a bunch of things at the end. I mean, we get to see the player cameras these days now, even with the online play, and the Fusion, just to see their faces after that match. Not Meko, sorry. I don't know where I got Meko from, but Fury, he turns his camera away, and you can see that they were upset. That was a tough, long, hard-fought series by both teams, and no one should be upset. I mean, it's a hard one to take for the Fusion, I'm not going to lie. That is extremely hard. They played really, really well. Some of the best Overwatch I've seen for a long time. It's absolutely crazy. But something I have to highlight for the Paris Eternal is this. They came into this off the back of a 5-map series against the San Francisco Shock. The team we thought were the best team in the league. That was a really long, really close, really drawn out series. And then they go to a 7-map series against Philadelphia Fusion. They played 8 hours or so of Overwatch straight. High level, not even, high level's not even doing it justice. This is the highest level of Overwatch you will find. You will not find higher level Overwatch than this. They played it for 8 hours straight. XZ was knackered by the end of that match against the Philadelphia Fusion. And I have to mention Fielder. Fielder is still in Korea. He's playing on 200 ping. He is playing through the night for this Paris Eternal squad. And it was kind of heartbreaking to see the Paris Eternal guys. You know, they were so over the moon with their victory. They're all jumping up and down, hugging each other and all that on the cans. And Fielder's just on his own. It was kind of, it was so hard to watch that, I'm not gonna lie. Just to see Fielder on his own, he wasn't really celebrating. It would have been so nice for him to be with the rest of his team, because Fielder played outstandingly. He has been a massive surprise since Paris Eternal signed him, and I really felt that moment. That was a moment. I'm not gonna lie. But this Paris Eternal squad. Wow. Just wow. I mean, the stars have kind of aligned for them in some respects in terms of the meta. I think we can say that. But this is, if they can maintain this sort of clutch ability and to maintain really good, consistent results in the regular season, there's no end to what this Paris Eternal squad could do later down the line. Playoffs are a major possibility for this Paris Eternal squad. And looking at what they've done during this Summer Showdown, is anyone going to bet against them winning it? I don't think we can. I think we have to put Paris Eternal as a contender. Not saying that they're the best team, but boy oh boy, that was some Overwatch we saw this weekend. And I mean, we've seen extraordinary Overwatch in the APAC region, but definitely the final 2 matches, between both featuring Paris against the Shock and the Fusion, they topped anything we saw in APAC this month. Definitely. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy, and well done to all of the teams involved. It's been a fantastic tournament. I think this has been better than the May Melee in some respects. I mean, you know, that's going to be, I think the May Melee was better in APAC than the Summer Showdown in APAC, but in NA, this has been it's been amazing in NA, this one. But we're going to take a look at the standings to round this off. Things have changed majorly now because we have the wins added onto records here. So Shanghai Dragons are still topping us off. They've hit that 20-win mark now. I think it would be very surprising if Shanghai Dragons are not our #1 team in the rankings, or in the standings, I should say, at the end of the season. There would have to be a pretty mighty drop in form for them. Philadelphia Fusion are still second, getting those 2 wins, obviously, even though they didn't win the entire thing. Guangzhou Charge are the big movers. With them winning in APAC, they get 3 wins on their record, boosting them up to 3rd, above the San Francisco Shock, who only got 1 win because of losing to the Paris Eternal. I mean, there's a big caveat with that, because the Guangzhou Charge have played more games than a lot of other teams, or anyone else to be quite honest, apart from Chengdu Hunters, and they're not anywhere near them. So Guangzhou Charge are not to be a team that, or not to be mucked around with, we should say. San Francisco Shock in 4th, New York Excelsior in 5th, but up to 6th now we have the Paris Eternal. They are now in playoff places, automatic qualification places, knocking the Florida Mayhem out of those places. Yeah. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. We have to remember that Florida Mayhem have played 1 less game though. Valiant in 8th, Seoul Dynasty up to 9th, for Seoul will still get 1 win on the board. Atlanta Reign in 10th, Hangzhou Spark in 11th, Los Angeles Gladiators in 12th, and I worried that that team is going to slip down that league somehow with the results they're getting at the moment. London Spitfire in 13th, not able to get a win on the board during this May Melee tournament, losing 3-1 in that APAC region to Seoul. Houston Outlaws up in 14th. I think Houston, they could make a little push, but they're running out of time looking at the amount of matches played. Toronto Defiant are in 15th. Again, a team that could make moves. Dallas Fuel in 16th. I think it's a little bit... I'm not sure whether this Dallas Fuel team is gonna make it, but they have a lot of games that they could make up the time, and the same can be said for the team below them in 17th, Vancouver Titans, who've been looking like they've been improving. Teams I worry for though, Chengdu Hunters, there looks like there is no improvement in the Chengdu Hunters, who are currently 18th, and honestly, with the Washington Justice and Boston Uprising in 19th and 20th respectively, I see those teams perhaps picking up an odd win somewhere. I don't see the Chengdu Hunters picking up odd wins. So I think it is a realistic possibility that Chengdu Hunters finish bottom of this league. And we will see how things pan out. We are going on a week's break now, and we will then be back for another round of regular fixtures. Then the community countdown, are they calling it? Something like that. And then we will have 2 more weeks, which I made a video about yesterday, and then we will have the build-up to the playoffs, which are going to be super interesting because we will finally see who is the very best in the Overwatch League. We have not seen Shanghai go up against the likes of the Shock or the Fusion, or maybe even the Paris Eternal now. And so it'll be incredibly interesting. I am fully aware that this is a long video, but this has been amazing. Keep a lookout over the next 2 days. There will be 2 Team of the Weeks, one for the North American region and one for the APAC region. The APAC region will most likely be the first one to come out. And boy oh boy, there's some crazy quality to put in those Team of the Weeks. Congratulations to the Guangzhou Charge for the APAC region, and congratulations to the Paris Eternal for that massive win in North America. And let's not take it away from the Philadelphia Fusion. They were fantastic as well. Everyone, really good show in the showdown, or the Summer Showdown for this month, and can't wait. We're getting to the end of the season here. Everything's going to get really spicy. But for now, thank you guys so much for this video. If you'd like to give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.